Welcome to the Disney vs. Battles, a series focusing on characters from the Disney universe, analyzing their combat skills and abilities in a side-by-side comparison to determine who would win in a hypothetical battle. Today's matchup will be Shego, the Mistress of Mayhem, versus Shan Yu, the Merciless Warlord. For this battle, I will be observing both combatants as they appear in their respective animated series and feature-length film. For Shego, I will be examining her throughout the entirety of the Kim Possible animated series. For Shan Yu, I will be examining him during the events of Mulan. I will not be using anything from a video game or any other non-canon sources. With all that out the way, let's begin. Once regarded as a hero in her city, Shego was a villain and former member of Team Go. As a child, Shego and her brothers gained their powers after a multicolored meteor crashed inside their treehouse. After this event, Shego gained the ability to manipulate green energy. Her eldest brother acquired superhuman strength. Migo received the ability to shrink, and her twin brothers possessed the ability to create duplicate versions of themselves. As a result, the siblings formed a team and named themselves Team Go. During her time as a hero, the Mistress of Mayhem fought against multiple enemies with superhuman abilities. After years of fighting against villains in her city, Shego began to lose patience with her brother's incompetence and became interested in the profitable nature of crime, which eventually caused her to leave the team. After quitting the team, Shego began working as a mercenary, infiltrating government agencies and stealing ancient artifacts. During her time as a criminal, Shego met Dr. Draken, a mad scientist who was intent on taking over the world. Not long after her employment with Draken, Shego encounters the teenage hero known as Kim Possible, and subsequently fails to defeat her. As a result, Kim became her arch rival and frequently engaged her adversary in close quarters combat. Throughout the course of her life, the Mistress of Mayhem has joined forces with Kim's enemies, traveled through time, and even conquered the world in an alternate timeline. After aliens invade the planet, a race known as the Lorwardians abduct Shego's rival. As a result, Ron teams up with Kim's father and attempts to rescue the hero from captivity. During the invasion, the dynamic duo encounter a robot armed with a copious amount of artillery. Once the android has them cornered, Shego emerges from the darkness and terminates their adversary. After saving their lives, Dr. Possible finds a pair of anti-gravity suits and informs the villain of his plan. However, Shego steals his outfit and leaves him stranded at the space station. As the pair gains access to the enemy vessel, the Mistress of Evil locates Dr. Draken and his nemesis, Kim Possible. Together, the team engages in a fierce battle to defeat the infamous Warhawk and ultimately save the Earth from its tyranny. Born in an unknown village, Shan Yu was a ruthless killer and leader of the Hun army. During his quest for power, the warlord managed to infiltrate the walls of China and began to wreak havoc on the populace. After destroying a small village, Shan Yu discovers a pair of spies hiding in the mountains. As a result, the warlord orders his men to capture the agents and subsequently forces them to deliver a message to the emperor. Before long, Shan Yu orders his archer to murder one of the scouts. As the warlord traveled to the imperial city, Shan Yu learns that General Li plan to ambush him and his troops. However, Shan Yu rushes into the trap and manages to defeat his enemies. After eliminating members of the Imperial Army, the warlord attempts to execute Shang's men, but ultimately fails when Mulan causes an avalanche and buries the Hun army. Despite her best efforts, Shan Yu and his men manage to survive. Once Shang's army reach the Imperial City, the warlord uses their death to infiltrate the Grand Palace. As the city began to celebrate their demise, 5 of the remaining Huns disguise themselves as dragon dancers. During a ceremony honoring Shang's men, Shan Yu emerges from the shadows, and his soldiers kidnap the emperor. After ordering his men to guard the entrance, the warlord threatens the emperor to kneel before his master. However, Shan Yu subsequently fails to intimidate his adversary. As the warlord began to strike his opponent, Captain Shang intercepts his blade and rescues the emperor. After Shang wrestles with Shan Yu, the warlord breaks free of his hold and uses brute force to defeat his enemy. Once Shan Yu began to end Shang's life, Mulan reveals her identity and proves she was responsible for the avalanche. As a result, the bloodthirsty warlord pursues his adversary. After reaching the palace roof, Shan Yu corners Mulan and attempts to kill her with his sword. However, the hero intercepts his blade and ultimately disarms him in combat. Before long, the pair engage in a brief skirmish, but near the climax of their confrontation, the hero of China outmaneuvers Shan Yu and knocks him off his feet. As the warlord began to recover, Mulan's guardian spirit fires a rocket at Shan Yu, causing a massive explosion, and kills the monster in the process. Shego is an expert in hand-to-hand combat. As a mercenary, Shego developed her skills in the field of martial arts, defeating several trained guards in addition to military-trained soldiers with little to no effort. Prior to her villainous career, the Mistress of Green Energy gained experience fighting against a plethora of superhuman criminals as a member of Team Go. In combat, Shego utilized energy-based attacks, combining her skills in hand-to-hand combat to create an unpredictable method of assault. When pushed into a defensive posture, Shego often employed a number of acrobatic maneuvers to evade her adversaries. During the events in Mulan, Shan Yu displayed a high level of intelligence and proved to be a cunning strategist. In his first appearance, the warlord managed to infiltrate the Imperial Palace and kidnap the Emperor of China. As a warrior, Shan Yu is a ruthless brawler, using his strength and size to overwhelm his opponents, employing a series of grapples and headbutts. The warlord also utilized his strength to choke his enemies into submission. In combat, Shan Yu brandished a Chinese version of the Moro sword, a single-hand double-edged sword with a silver guard, medium-length hilt, and jagged-edged blade. Despite his combat experience, the warlord hasn't shown any significant skill in swordsmanship, and heavily relied on brute force, in addition to heavy cleaves, in order to murder his adversaries. As a villain, Shego has displayed the potential to rule as a dictator when an opportunity presents itself. However, she lacks the proper motivation to actively seek such an endeavor. In contrast, Shan Yu has proven to be a superior strategist and is much more calculating in his quest to conquer China. Despite this, both villains are highly experienced fighters in hand-to-hand combat. Due to his strength and size, the warlord's method of fighting gives him a significant advantage in terms of power. However, Shego possesses a superior fighting style with a wider range of skills and is capable of shooting energy from her hands. Although Shan Yu's sword provides him with a greater reach and is arguably more lethal, Shego's energy serves more than one purpose and provides her with more options in combat. As a result, Shego gets the edge for combat skills and weaponry. With the aid of her Team Go Glow, the Mistress of Green Energy developed an impressive measure of physical strength, punching through concrete, ripping apart steel bars, and smashing thick square crates with a single blow. Shego is also capable of knocking people unconscious with a single touch. Shego is incredibly fast and is capable of reaching speeds above the average capacity of a normal human, which places her among the ranks of Olympic-level athletes in peak physical condition. Due to her training in martial arts, in addition to honing her skills as a mercenary, Shego possesses an extremely high level of agility. In combat, the villain proves she is capable of performing death-defying acrobatics, dodging machine gun fire, lasers, and missiles at close range without any apparent effort. Shego has displayed an impressive measure of durability. In her battle with Kim Possible, the villain managed to endure a blow that knocked her through a table, withstood a punch from Kim's physically enhanced battlesuit, survived being kicked off a tall building, and slamming into an electric tower. Shego has also been knocked through several walls and casually shrugs off the damage. Shego possessed the ability to generate bright green energy from her hands. This form of energy allows her to burn or melt anything she touches and can be used to fire energy beams, which range from precision laser blasts to an explosive concussive force with enough power to rival hand grenades. With the aid of her powers, Shego can enhance her natural strength and is capable of delivering energy strikes powerful enough to bend steel. However, she does have limits. If Shego uses a hefty amount of her powers, she will become tired. Shan Yu possessed a superhuman measure of physical strength. The warlord was strong enough to defeat Li Shang with an elbow strike, followed by a vicious headbutt. Prior to his final battle, the merciless warlord managed to lift a man by his throat, knock down a barricaded door, and slice through a trio of thick, large pillars. Near the climax of his battle with Mulan, Shan Yu managed to tear a hole through the Emperor's roof. Despite his hulking frame, Shan Yu is capable of reaching a moderate level of speed, rushing his opponents with the force of a raging bull. Due to his massive size and weight, Shan Yu is not very agile. During his battle with Li Shang, the merciless conqueror was easily outmaneuvered by his adversary, and hasn't shown any skill to suggest he is capable of performing a high level of evasive action. The warlord possessed a superhuman level of endurance. In his first encounter with Mulan, Shan Yu managed to survive being buried in an avalanche for what appeared to be several hours without suffering any apparent health problems. He also tanked hits from Li Shang. Shan Yu is an experienced tracker who is capable of finding an opponent with the smallest amount of details and has been able to avoid an ambush by the Imperial Army. As the warlord rode through the country with his comrades, Shan Yu was able to detect the presence of Imperial scouts and ordered his men to find them. In terms of strength, Shan Yu has demonstrated an impressive measure of power, smashing through doors, roofs, and pillars, overwhelming his opponents with brute force. However, Shego managed to rip through steel bars and demolish concrete. So far, the warlord hasn't revealed anything to suggest he is capable of replicating strength of that magnitude. Based on her speed and dexterity, Shego is faster and much more agile, demonstrating a high level of evasive action. During a battle with Mulan, Shan Yu managed to survive an avalanche. However, Shego was able to withstand a massive amount of electricity. Although Shego's powers provide her with a significant advantage in combat, Kim proved it's possible to deflect her energy beams with metal, which can work in Shan Yu's favor. Despite her impressive measure of power, the warlord is strong enough to endure the brunt of her assault. Although Shan Yu's enhanced senses erase all forms of stealth, the warrior failed to pinpoint his enemy's position. As a result, Shego gets the edge in powers and abilities. In a battle of villains, this fight will be a contest between Shego's speed, strength, and powers versus the warlord's strength, tactical mind, and swordsmanship. This fight will take place in the Imperial Palace. There will be no prep time. The fight begins when Shego launches a series of energy blasts. The warlord manages to block her attacks and attempts to rush his opponent with an overhead slash. Dodging his sword, Shego counters his attack with a kick to Shan Yu's midsection. The warlord loses his balance and falls into a wall. As her opponent laid against the wall, the Mistress of Green Energy continues her assault with a flaming punch. Shan Yu catches her arm in mid-swing and tosses the villain into a support beam, but she manages to use her athletic abilities to flip from one pillar to the next. Shan Yu descends into madness and began slicing through the support beams. After leaping from the last pillar, Shego attempts to strike the madman with her knee. As a result, Shan Yu retaliates with a series of sword strikes, but the villain managed to dodge all of his strikes and counters with an uppercut. Despite her best efforts, the warlord shrugs off her attack. Using her speed, Shego continues her assault with a flurry of jabs, followed by a whirlwind of kicks. Shan Yu counters her kicks with an elbow strike. As the warlord began to stab his opponent through the heart, Shego trips the madman and unleashes a massive amount of energy, killing him in the process. I declare Shego, the Mistress of Mayhem, the victor. A fight between Shego and Shan Yu is a contest of strength and skill colliding with an onslaught of brute force. Shego's approach to combat was one of refined technique that boasted intricate movements combined with energy-based attacks. In contrast, the warlord was more of an unstoppable juggernaut, dominating his opponents by force rather than pure skill. Due to the straightforward nature of his methods, Shan Yu's fighting style was predictable and often left him open to counterattacks that can easily be exploited by a better trained combatant who is strong enough to take advantage of his shortcomings. In light of this revelation, Shego's technique is specifically designed to eliminate an opponent such as Shan Yu. Despite the warlord's impressive durability, Shego is capable of producing a massive amount of energy that can generate enough force to replicate the very explosion which resulted in his death. As a result, Shan Yu loses this matchup. I'd like to give a shout out to the Batman of Neo Gotham. Thank you for suggesting this matchup. It definitely made me think. This has been another edition of the Disney vs. Battle series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching.
After joining an expedition to Africa, William Cecil Clayton served as a guide and bodyguard to Professor Porter and his daughter Jane. As a result, Clayton appeared to be a chivalrous gentleman, using his experience as a hunter to protect the Porters on their journey. Once the trio began their search for gorillas in the African jungle, Jane wanders off and is pursued by a group of baboons. Despite this encounter,
once a proud father and loving husband of Kala, Kerchak was the leader of a small troop of gorillas that lived in the African jungle. As a father, Kerchak spent most of his time bonding with his son, maintaining the happiness of his family. However, their happiness is shattered